I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Davie County School Board of May the 7th. First item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda. I have a motion by Mr. Drexler. I have a second by Mr. Carroll. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. I appreciate that. Next, I need a motion to go into closed session to preserve attorney-client privilege pursuant to North Carolina general statutes, to discuss personnel matters protected by state law, and to discuss student matters made confidential by North Carolina general statutes and FERPA. I have a motion by Colonel Hills. I have a second by Ms. Smith. All in favor? We're now in closed session. I would like to welcome everyone back from closed session and welcome you to the Davie County School Board meeting of May 7th. First item on our agenda is our invocation. Loving and gracious God, we thank you today for all your blessings, for the successful outcomes of our school events, and for all our staff members. We ask that you bless them abundantly, and we continue to seek your wisdom, guidance, courage, and strength. Be with us in our deliberations and help us to be wise in the decisions we make for the good of all of those who have placed their trust and confidence in us. Give us insight to lead with integrity, that our decisions may reflect what is right and good. Keep us from short-sightedness and pettiness. Help us to make decisions that are for the good of all, and guard us from blind self-interest. Grant us the humility to always seek your will in all we do and say. Amen. Next, we have the pledge, and we have Boy Scout Troop 575, the pack of one.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Next, I will look for a motion to approve the minutes from April 22nd, April 24th, and April 2nd. I have a motion by Colonel Hills. I have a second by Mr. Carroll. Any discussion? All those in favor? Sure. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next, have important dates, and I'll run over a few. We are burning through the year. May 14th, it is the farewell reception for Dr. Steed. He said it sounded like a funeral. But we can't thank him enough for stepping in for this community. This isn't the first time. Hopefully it won't be the last, but just continue to thank him. But that's on Tuesday at 8:30, May 14th, is a reception for Dr. Steed in the, where is that? In the conference room on Cherry Street. And then on May 15th, Wednesday at 8:30, we have a swearing-in ceremony that's going to be here for Jeff Wallace. Then we have graduations, hard to believe. May 18th, we have the Davie County Early College at 11 a.m., high school graduation, and that will be at the Davie County High School. May 21st at 6 p.m. we have the retirement reception, and that'll be at the farm at Oak Hill. And then moving into June, Board of Commissioners meeting at 6 p.m. on June 3rd. And special note that our next board meeting will be in June, and that'll be the summer schedule where we start at 4 p.m. and have a closed session afterwards. And then we have high school graduation at 8:30 on Saturday, June 8th. It's hard to believe it's here. Next, we have the Superintendents Report. And one final time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Steed. make it a good one.
Sounds like a test, doesn't it? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members, guests, and the people we're going to recognize. Also, want to recognize you shortly, which we will. Glad you're here with us. I just wanted to recognize, I've got a few things I just want to mention, but welcome Miss Bricky back. She is now another one of us, we interims, I should say. As you know, that's right, the list grows. I talked to somebody the other day and I said, we're not hiring anybody but interims for the rest of the year. As you know, Elle is on family leave. And by the way, she just offered some pictures. If anybody wants to see them, I have them on my phone. She sent them this afternoon if people want to see the new baby. She did deliver a new baby last Monday morning, and she has 2 sons, and so she's missing work. She said, I told her, I said, you got more on your hands than to worry about that. But anyway, glad Jean was able to come back, and she's already gotten after me a little bit, because when I called her, I said, you know, my plans could potentially be here through June. But now that I'm not going to be here through June, I'm not sure how she feels about it, but she feels better now that she knows Mr. Wallace is in there, so they could go together. Yesterday, I had a call from Laura Smith, and she said, or it actually was a text, and she said, May 6th, I'm a day off. May 6th was a special day in our community, in that it was the 5th anniversary of the passing of the bond. So there should have been a huge event. We let that slip. I mean, we really did. But to go along with that, we had the other night, just to show you the importance, the other night we had a soccer game going on. We had a baseball game, playoff game going on. Well, not a playoff game, but it's good enough to be a playoff game. It's the biggest crowd we've ever had out there for baseball. Character ed recognition. There was something else going on in the gym, and soccer, volleyball something was going on. So we could have never obviously had that, were it not for the building. And then on Saturday, we had this past Saturday, our Davy Arts program. The check, I couldn't find a place to put the check, and I wanted to put it up there, but I didn't know how to hang it. The check you'll see on the floor is a check that actually presented to us for $10,000. Pretty strong, pretty strong. So I just wanted to point that out and remind that what a great and generous donation. The last thing I did want to mention, with you parents here especially, and sometimes we have to look at calendar and have to make changes. We did make a change last week, May 1st, when the teacher march was in Raleigh. We looked at that over a period of about, and we looked at last year's as well, but we looked at that. We monitored with our schools what the possibility would be and how many people would not be able to be at work or would choose to go to the rally. We had 165 certified people absent that day. Folks, we couldn't have had we couldn't have had a meaningful day of school with that many people out. We just couldn't do it. Now, we could have had 4 classes go to the gym and put one poor soul to go in to watch them, but that really wasn't a good idea. Basically, we recommended, and the board agreed, that this is a better way to handle it. I wish we could work out, I don't mind saying, I wish we could work out something that it's not on a school day, that it might be on a day that it did involve this, but that's the way it is. So I just wanted to point out that situation and let you know. We could cover on a day probably 50 or so teachers, certified teachers out. We just don't have the subs. And some of those people that were out were also bus drivers. We had some people that took days off too because they were encouraging bus drivers in all levels of work to come. So all that put together, we just felt like that was the best way to do it. We're gonna make the day back up, and we're gonna convert some things, some early release days and other things. So the day will be made, but I just wanted to point that out. And I think that's the last thing I had. Thank you. And I believe this is my last board meeting. Is that what you said?
I think that's right.
Okay. I just wanted to be sure.
Thank you very much, and welcome, Miss Bricky. You're always welcome.
Good to be back.
Good. Still not wearing a tie, I'm sorry. Next item is recognitions. I'll call on Jenda Haynes for Battle of the Books.
Chairman Junker, board members, Dr. Steed, guest. We have some amazing students to recognize tonight, and so I want to talk a little bit about Battle of the Books, and I'm going to ask these groups to come up. We're going to start by honoring our elementary school Battle of the Books winners. On April 9th, we hosted our district elementary Battle of the Books at Davie High School. Again, wonderful facility to host that. We had students from all 6 elementary schools competing. Some of our schools had multiple teams. These students had read 12 books, studied them extensively, and prepared for this night. They competed in 7 rounds of questions, but our champion was Kernatzer Elementary School's team. So I'm going to ask Coach Amanda Brooks to come up, and we'd like to call these students up to be recognized, and then hopefully Coach Brooks will say a few things about the team. We want to call them up and get them in front of you first. Corey Bailey. Come on up. Jaden Davis. Abby Lankford. Lana Robinson. Oh, Lana, I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me. Alice Rucker. This one's yours.
It was a pleasure working with these girls this year. They started reading these books back in the summer, worked hard, came to me during lunch multiple times a week, pretty steady since Christmas for sure, but we met once in October and then again in November and then December just to see where we were, and they just worked so hard, and they deserve all the credit because they did all the work. I just asked them a few questions, and they held it all up here. They were wonderful. Congratulations, girls.
I want you ladies to turn around and face the board just for a minute because I want them to see the big cheeses on your face. This was serious competition. You need to understand it's serious competition. Congratulations, ladies. On March 13th, we had our district middle school Battle of the Books, and we host that at our Davie County Public Library here in town. These students read 27 books, and for some of these students, this is 27 books on top of a 40-book challenge from their English Language Arts class. So I want you to understand just the magnitude of that. These students competed in 9 rounds of questions, and our winner this year is North Davie Middle School, and they went on to compete at the regional level. So I'm going to ask Debbie Whitehead, who's the coach, to come on up, and we'll recognize these students and give them their certificates. Starting with Ellie Addison. Caitlin Evans. Aubrey Godby. Robert McGrew. Isis Snyder. Do we have her? No. Bonnie Jo Taylor. And Brianne Winfrey.
"27 books. That's not bad. But to remember all the details in them, beyond me. I am so proud of these guys. They have worked really hard. We went to regionals and they did well. I was proud of them. Behavior and just studying and getting done what needed to be done. So good job, guys.
Congratulations. Next, we have our consent agenda, and I will entertain a motion. I have a motion by Mr. Drexler. I have a second by Colonel Hills. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I may, like to thank you, Board, for your decision on our on our personnel report. And at this time, you've just approved for our new CFO, our Chief Financial Officer. Clay, if you don't know who that is, you saw that, didn't you? I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Clay Harris. Mr. Harris, if you don't mind standing up, please. Mr. Harris has his wonderful family with us. He has Kesley, right? Kesley is 19 years old, and she's finishing her freshman year at UNC Wilmington, studying criminology and psychology. So here's one thing important. She wants to work for the FBI, so be ready. His other daughter, Samantha. Samantha's 14 years old, and she is a freshman at Oak Grove High School. And I understand an avid softball player, right? And was a volleyball player. Tennis. Sorry. Almost. It's round. And then we have Miss Lisa, his wife, Clay's wife. Lisa, if you don't mind standing, we want to welcome you to Davie County, and we are elated that you're here, all of you. And I hope you got just a little feel for the way we do things. And there's a lot of pride here, but we'd love to recognize our folks, and we expect our people to work hard and do a good job. Clay has earned his bachelor's degree in accounting from the University of UNC Charlotte. In 1994, he spent 18 years working with PepsiCo. And in one of my questions, I said, Mr. Harris, did you ever handle large accounts? And he said, I was involved with the national team lead, and that one account was over $4 billion. I said, well, we don't have a $4 billion account here. So you've answered that question correctly. Mr. Harris led groups. He was directly supervised over 37 people. And one of his positions where he was in conflict resolution or difficult situations with customers. So once he left PepsiCo after 18 years, he went to work for Davidson County Schools, where he worked 2 years as a fixed asset specialist. And then after that, he has spent the last 2 years working as their assistant director of finance. And so the one thing Tammy will tell you, and all of my colleagues will tell you, it is vital to get someone that understands school finance. We're very, very fortunate to have someone like that. And he has completed his certification with the North Carolina ASBO, and he's working on a couple other certifications that's required. But welcome, all of you. And Clay, thank you for being here.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I need a moment. Okay, for you folks out there, you don't know, but when this kid was 11 years old, he was in Weeblos, and I called him Weeblos for a while. This was 30 years ago. Oh, great. But I can't remember the last time I saw him. And then I hear he's coming on as our CFO. So that is a great thing. Let me speak for a while. Your dad is a and your granddad is a Excuse me. Yes, sir.
It's great that you would recognize them and give them this warm welcome, but they don't live in David. They can't vote over here.
I take it all back. No, I don't.
I'm sorry, see, this is my last meeting. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
I haven't said I was going to run for re-election either. We're glad to have you. You're a great guy.
Absolutely.
You're going to be a tremendous
Absolutely.
asset to Davie County Schools. No doubt in my mind.
We're excited to have you. Thank you. Next item is business items. We have student fees and annual college textbook usage fee. And we'll turn it over to Ms. Naylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we were reviewing the budget, we had two issues of fees come up in discussion. The first would be to raise our student fee from $15 per student to $20 per student, to add some additional funding for those much-needed classroom resources. 100% of the money paid for this fee does go back to the school. We looked and we could not remember when it went from $10 to $15. It was so long ago. So it has been $15 for a very long time. And so we would like to request to increase this fee from $15 to $20. In addition, in talking with the early college, they also have a need for an annual college textbook usage fee. They spend about $40,000 a year in textbooks. They have had a decrease in funding, which seems to be the trend. And I think this would be, this is a fee to help offset that cost. Of course, $50 per child is not going to cover all of the textbooks, but it will help offset that cost. They had some reserve for textbooks that they have exhausted since their funding went down, and so this is basically trying to, you know, raise some revenue to help with that cost. So this would be an annual textbook usage fees. So I would like to recommend that we would approve these fees.
Thank you. Questions from Ms. Naylor or staff? Sure.
And council just asked me the question, just so everyone will understand. Those fees would apply to, as would any fees that we have under hardship in the event that families that could not afford it, hardship fees would apply to that. So I want to make sure everybody understands.
That's a part of our policy.
That is policy.
I just want to make sure no one is precluded from participating.
And I just wanted to make sure everybody understood it before we vote.
Our statement says that the reserve has been depleted. Are you saying there is some reserve?
Do you know, we have a textbook allocation, and over the years, if I'm understanding correctly, they had been able to save some money in their textbook account, which is allotted from the state, because that will roll over from year to year. And so they have been using their textbook money to help pay for these textbook costs, and so they don't earn enough money per pupil to replenish it sufficiently to pay the textbook cost. So they had these reserves built up, the reserves are gone, and so now, you know, we're trying to help come up with a recurring source to help fund these textbooks.
Yeah, I'm certainly not against your proposal, but I just wondered if there's still going to be some deficit for textbook purchasing. I don't know that $50 is going to cover all the textbooks they're going to need. In fact, I feel pretty confident that it usually doesn't.
It doesn't, but we, in their state grant, we have budgeted funds in there for textbooks for next year, but we just don't have enough for 100% of the textbooks.
Okay.
So,
Can I speak to that?
Thank you.
you can.
If I can speak to that reserve just a minute, Mr. Potts. Back when we opened the early colleges, as she alluded to, the funding was much better. So the reserve that was built up over the first years that the early college was open was not actually textbook money to begin with. It was general grant funds. And so we were strongly advised as we were building that program, you know, we just started with 9th graders. So there wasn't as much expense the first year or the second year or the third year. As we grew to having all 4 classes or 5 classes of students, of course the cost increased. But we were strongly advised up front to manage that grant very carefully, and any, so to speak, extra funds to put in our textbook account, because that rolled from year to year, knowing that the cost of textbooks would increase over time. So that's really where the reserve came from. They still would get textbook money, but not nearly enough on an annual basis. But that's where the reserve came from.
Okay, is this for rental, or is this be for purchases?
They're actually purchased, and then
The individual student owns the textbook?
No.
Okay.
The school purchases the textbooks, and then they manage those. So they will use them as many semesters as they possibly can.
Good, good.
Thank you. Any other questions? I will entertain a motion for both, or do we need to separate those? I think it's for both then. I have a motion by Mr. Potts, has a second by Colonel Hales. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. And Ms. Naylor, we will turn it back over to you for the budget draft resolution for 1920.
Okay.
Let me just open one with this item. You have my budget message in the packet. You had received a draft copy of that last week, and we did a little tweaking on it, but it's pretty much the same. No significant changes. I want to make sure that everybody, including everyone in the audience and anyone in listening distance, understands what a difficult task it is to build this particular part of our budget. It's very preliminary. We're waiting for other budgets to take place. We're waiting for the state, and we have put something in place what we think will work. Now, we don't know what's going to work and what legislature does, and or when the legislature will adopt a budget. So I say that to you. I can't say it enough to you that we realize and understand that this is a very preliminary draft, but by law we have to have it ready and go to the commission. So this is what we're doing as we present it in May. It goes to the commission, and this is the part that they'd act on. So just wanted to make sure everybody was clear on that.
Okay. I think he said what I was going to say.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just kidding.
We forgot to rehearse.
Yeah.
It's his last meeting, so he's just.
Well, it could.
He's showing off. He's acting like he knows something.
Not that we're counting. All right. So the budget resolution that we have tonight, this will not be the budget that we follow for the fiscal year of 1920. This is merely the budget that we have put together to satisfy the requirement, basically, of having a budget ready by May 1st and ready to submit to the commissioners by May 15th. And we had a 2-hour work session. We have been through this, but just a couple comments. Over 73% of our funding comes from state and federal allotments. We don't know our state and federal allotments. Over 87% of our budget is personnel. We don't know what our personnel is going to cost next year. We don't know what raises are going to be. We don't know what matching retirement is going to be. We don't know what hospitalization is going to be. A few things we do know. We do know our ADM is going to be funded at 6,133 students, slightly less than last year. We know salaries and benefits will go up. We don't know how much they will go up. We are very fortunate to know what our county revenue is going to be due to our interlocal agreement. And we worked really hard to build our local current expense budget based on that revenue source and doing the best we could to estimate what all our personnel and expenses would be. So the great effort went into that local current expense budget and building that budget. Our special revenue fund, that is where we hold special revenue and our major grants, like Davy Leeds is held in there. And so a good bit of work did go into trying to estimate those revenues and budget out that new money as best we could. Our capital outlay budget. We do have capital outlay budgeted, and you have a summary of our projects included. We go through the capital outlay process by having directors and administrators submit requests to Mr. Spillman, Mr. Rooney, and Mr. Wallace. I'll work through those requests, and then we meet together to try to make a determination of what projects we can carry out. There's always more projects than money. And it seems to, the requests never really stop. I finally, in trying to get this document done, I had to finally tell them the capital outlay budget is closed. We can't have any more discussion, right now. It can't be a moving target. Another thing about the capital outlay budget, just to remember, this is a July 1 to June 30th budget. That summary of projects, they won't all happen on July 1. Some may happen this summer, some may happen next summer, but just because it's in the list doesn't mean that the worker will show up on the first day of July to do the project. And just, to summarize, this is to meet the requirement of the general statutes for May 1st. What will happen next is in June at our next meeting, we will actually bring you a continuing budget resolution that will say for operations, we will continue at the same level of spending as this year. It's very standard and it happens year after year because the General Assembly has not adopted a budget, therefore we don't know how to budget. We will have the actual capital outlay budget to adopt. It should hopefully look similar to this, but it could potentially change a little bit between now and then. But we know our funding for capital outlay, and so it would just be if any priorities of projects would change. So I guess my recommendation would be that you would approve this document as the budget that we would then submit to the commissioners as well.
Thank you, Ms. Naylor. And thank you for all the work that the team organizations put together with a lot of gaps that you got to still try to put something together. So thank you for that. Is there any questions? Yes, sir.
Concerning the capital outlay information, at the meeting that we have with parents and principals, we're often asked about various improvements, what's going to happen. They have various requests. My first question is, do each one of the principals have a copy of this so they can answer that question?
They will.
Okay, they don't now, but they will. Do we know if there are any major capital requests from the schools unanswered by this capital plan?
Are you asking if, are there items that were requested that will not be funded or will not be carried out?
Yes.
As Ms. Naylor mentioned, there are oftentimes projects that we cannot fund.
And the principals to that is the principals, they're aware of that? I assume they're in on this decision?
The principals meet with their leadership teams and they send their request to us in priority order.
Okay.
We first balance that by looking at safety.
Right.
And then we move from there as far as the needs, and some of it are basic, carpet, flooring, sure, roofs, and those sure things always have to come first, okay, yes. But they will be made aware of what is approved and what is not. That right is correct, yes, sir.
And I understand we're in kind of a wishy-washy area here, especially with the budget, where we know some things, there's a lot of things we don't know. On the capital outlay, has this been set up so we know what the start time and anticipated completion are for these projects?
Yes, nothing will start before July 1st. Now, shortly after that, I'm not being funny, but that's truly where we are, which always somewhat puts us in a predicament because then you have to, some projects you have to bid on, some projects you have to order. So it does take us time throughout the year, just like last year. Give you a great example. The card readers project that was approved last year is being finalized now. And it just takes time for ordering, it takes time, and here's another difficult piece. All school systems are like this. So they're all requesting very similar items from their vendors
but
at this
I
time.
guess at some point in time, though, someone's going to sit down and create a little PERT chart or some kind of schedule as to when these will start and when they'll be completed?
Sure, good question. As a matter of fact, we had an operations meeting this week, and we laid out our summer plan of when we would start on X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Yes, absolutely, which has to go in line with the maintenance plan of floors, waxing, painting, buildings, and those things. Yes, sir.
Just one last question, and from my ignorance, please excuse me. The plan shows unbudgeted funds of $121,707. Then there's a space, and it says 758, I'm assuming this is dollars, 758,007. How do we interpret that? What does that mean? It's on the very bottom of the capital.
Okay, so this would be the 758,000 is the total of the project section of the budget.
That have been considered, okay.
So I kind of divided this up probably a little differently than what you have seen before. General needs, technology needs, custodial, transportation, and then in maintenance, I showed our annual recurring needs, which left a certain number of dollars for the projects, and that is that last section that totals $758,000. And the unbudgeted, that is kind of for emergencies that come up, things that we just couldn't plan for,
Okay.
hurricanes that come through and blow your,
All right.
awnings
So the
away.
unbudgeted is 121,707.
Yes.
The
Yes.
budgeted, or what the estimate is, the total is the 758.
Right.
Okay, on the sheets we got, I couldn't differentiate between the
Okay.
two. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion? I have a motion by Mr. Drexler. I have a second by Ms. Smith. Hope there'll be no further discussion. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you again. Next item is public address to the board. Ms. Wilson.
I do not have a microphone. I also do not need a microphone. There are no speakers.
We know that.
Even in my phone.
Yeah, I was going to say, I felt the love in that. Last item is the adjournment, and if there's no comments, I will ask for a motion.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I hadn't thought about this till we were in this session. Earlier, we've been getting all this stuff about calendar, bills and so forth, and I haven't seen anything the last 3 or 4 weeks. What's happened with that? Anybody have no notifications that you're not getting?
We tried to early on keep you as informed with that as possible there, and gave you everything as it came out, but, well, we haven't seen anything lately.
Yeah, no doubt.
The only
I'm sure
thing
you
I-
were sending it to us, but I just wanted
Back
to.
up a little bit, I saw some things that Jack Oak sent out with NCASA, but it basically just outlined what each of those bills were and described, didn't tell where they were in the process.
Okay. Motion to adjourn, sir.
Now, hold on, just one comment, thanks. Looking at that list of donations, that's a wonderful thing, and these people and companies have contributed to help this cause. Do we have a way, and again, my ignorance, of acknowledging and thanking those who donate?
Yes.
Just so I know, how do we do that? Is there?
We have, we send them a letter, a donation acknowledgement letter.
Yeah.
Now, very often they will also do, more personal handwritten thank you letters, but we do have a letter that is a standard that we send out for acknowledgements.
I wish it could be done publicly, because I think those people, those companies deserve, that recognition. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Between that and other partnerships that we have with the community, we would be in a much worse shape than we are today without that. So, thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Potts to adjourn. I have a second by Mr. Drexler. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much for being here.